Hello, everybody. My 2025 birding challenge did not begin the way I had hoped, but it's going pretty good, and it did start off with kind of a bang. I was hoping to have a first of the year birding challenge on New Year's Day to see how many birds I could get, hopefully over 100, but that didn't work out. And I actually was indoors nearly the whole day, so no birds on day one. So I thought, well, I'll start my birding challenge on one day in January, but I wasn't sure when. However, that all changed when one morning before dawn, I was driving down the road and a barn owl flew out in front of me. So I figured that was as good a time as any to start my big year birding challenge. And this year I'm hoping to see at least 250 birds. Before, I was always trying to see more birds than was on my life list, which is around the mid 350s. But I thought 250 sounds more logical, especially with my paltry birding budget. But the barn owl flew out in front of my pickup while I was going down the highway, but although it kind of flew out in front of me, it was above my pickup and it stopped and turned around in the air, so it was fine. I don't have any video or, photos, obviously, so here's a reenactment. But that was only the second time I've ever seen a barn owl in my life, both times in flight, and I gotta say, these owls look almost solid white from when viewed from below. A few days later, the area where I live received a bunch of snow, so I knew that would bring in some uncommon birds to my feeders, and of course it did. A female purple finch stopped by, and also the usual suspects: dark-eyed juncos, northern cardinals, American goldfinches, and several sparrow species as well, including chipping, harrises, fox, and song. But the most surprising visitor was this lark sparrow. Somehow, I can't locate the video footage that I took, so here's a screen grab that I got before I misplaced the footage. I normally don't see lark sparrows until April, as they winter far south of where I live, and I have never seen one here in the winter, so that was pretty cool. I'd been keeping an eye on the birds at the feeders, and they often freaked out and flew away to the trees, only to return pretty quickly. However, on one occasion they burst into flight and didn't return. After a minute or so, I realized they were gone, and it was eerily quiet. I wondered if there was a terminator in the area, but I didn't see one when I looked around. The birds continued to stay away, so I gave it a better look, and there she was, a fairly large sharp-shinned hawk. It was a juvenile, but based on its large size, I determined it was a female. Since she wasn't eating anything, it appeared she was unsuccessful at capturing a feeder bird. She didn't stick around long, so I wasn't able to get much footage, and certainly no photos. But it was nice to add this bird to the list so quickly. In late January, I visited Lake Hefner in Oklahoma City in search of a red-throated loon that had been seen by several birders in the prior week or two. When I first arrived, I discovered this black-crowned night heron in a tree next to a canal. I also discovered that my video camera did not have an SD card in it. I had forgotten to put it back in the camera, and I had forgotten to bring a spare. But it was awesome to see this bird, which is pretty uncommon where I live, and I don't always get to add it to my year lists. Prior to locating the red-throated loon, I saw a few horned grebes and a huge raft of water birds which consisted of red-breasted and common mergansers. They were way out in the middle of the lake, so I couldn't get any good photos. I eventually found the red-throated loon, which was an awesome lifer to get. My luck with seeing anything but common loons at Lake Hefner has always been terrible. Of course, last year I kind of broke the curse when I found a Pacific loon there after so many attempts at others that were unsuccessful. The red-throated loon was a bit smaller than the common loon, but not quite as small as the Pacific loon that I saw last year. Of course, since it's winter, its plumage is only black and white. Its bill was noticeably thinner than the common, and it held the bill slightly upward. I actually got my camera to handle one of the SD cards from another camera, so I was able to get at least some footage. Of course, the camera would shut off after a few seconds and say, "This card is not right for your camera." but I did get this footage, which was shaky because it was quite windy that day. But I did, however, manage to get some decent photos, including this one where the loon and I surprised each other. It was making its way south, dive by dive, and I drove to an area where I thought I had enough time to set up my tripod and everything before it resurfaced. It popped out of the water and I froze. It also froze briefly, but then turned and started heading out, putting some distance between the two of us. But it was a great experience, and I did observe some of its behavior. There was a point where I was out in the middle of the lake, swimming with a common loon, and both of them dove underwater, and for some reason the red-throated loon resurfaced and ran and flew across the top of the water for a good 30 yards or so before settling back down on the water's surface. I don't know what it encountered under the water. Maybe the common loon was upset at it or something, but it was in a big hurry to get away from there. Also, I observed this behavior where it would dunk its head underwater and back out again. I assume it was just looking under there to see if there were any fish around, but I can't say for certain. After watching the loon for a while, I made my way around the dam where I saw a few white pelicans. And at the water treatment facility below the dam, I saw this group of ducks, which included gadwalls, hooded mergansers, a bufflehead, and a couple of lesser scops. What a great day it turned out to be. In early February, I saw an email where a Say's phoebe had been seen at Tishomingo National Wildlife Refuge on the north shore of Lake Texoma. And it's a rare visitor for the area. There was one there nearly all winter last year, and I assumed it was probably the same bird. So I made the drive down there and I found the phoebe pretty quick. However, if it was the same bird as last year, it certainly wasn't as cooperative as that one was. During the visit last winter, the bird was very comfortable around me and would even fly and land close to me on occasion. But this time, this Say's phoebe seemed a bit more nervous. Maybe that comes with age and experience, but I'm not sure. I didn't really get a good photo or any good footage, so here's some footage from last year. I was also distracted by this horned lark, which is sort of uncommon, and I don't always get it every year, so that was nice. While there, I also saw some green-winged teal and dozens of American pipits flying around, and some Wilson snipes. Because Tishomingo has become my go-to place for winter wrens, I drove to the area where I see them the most. And it's no wonder, the habitat there is perfect for them. All kinds of ground cover and shrubby goodness. But if you walk around there long enough, the winter wrens will sound off, and they're fairly common there in the winter, it seems. I didn't get very good footage or photos of them, however, so here's a photo from last year. But it was great to get them on my list, as this is another one of those birds that I don't always get unless I'm absolutely looking for it. I continued on in the woods and found this curious eastern phoebe, which seemed to stay within 20 feet of me for a while as I slowly walked through the woods. Perhaps it thought I would stir up some prey. Recently, I was traveling for something other than birding, but I fortunately happened upon a few scenarios. First, I saw a large flock of Canada geese near a pond in a farm pasture. I stopped on the shoulder of the highway to see if there were any other species of geese mixed in, and sure enough there were a couple of greater white-fronted geese and several cackling geese mixed in. I shot these crummy photos, but the birds were rather far away, so there's that. Not far down the road, I also saw this northern harrier male, a gray ghost. It was way off in a field, so the photo is heavily cropped and is not very good. A little while later, and several miles down the road, I saw a red-shouldered hawk feeding on something along the shoulder of the highway. As I was observing, photographing, and filming the bird, it appeared that it was eating a deceased red-shouldered hawk. It seemed kind of grisly, but that's exactly what it was. I'm not sure what happened, but since it was so close to the road, I imagine the deceased hawk was hit by a car and the other one took advantage of the situation. It is winter after all, and the living birds seemed ravenously hungry, so I kind of understand the situation. However, I was also thinking, geez, I hope these birds weren't partners or a couple or something. Honey? Honey? Oh my gosh, honey! Well, there's nothing I can do now, and I am rather hungry, so, you know. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you.